For the year 2020, I'm making a video review for every new movie I watch, whether in theaters or at home, and on March 27th I watched The Royal Tenenbaums. Welcome to my year in movies. This is talking to myself. Nothing brings the family together like a sudden and grim cancer diagnosis, which may also be fake. I wasn't planning on doing the whole review in that style. I definitely considered doing the whole review using that kind of stilted formal delivery, but I'm way too excited about this film to limit myself that way. I love Wes Anderson movies. I should watch more Wes Anderson movies. Every single Wes Anderson movie gives me something new to enjoy and appreciate. For a long time, my favorite was The Grand Budapest Hotel, but I think this has the potential to edge it out. There are so many things about this film that are extremely my thing. You have a capital F family in the twilight years of their influence and glory, check. You have former child prodigies with a lot of resentment and confusion about what their lives mean now. Check. You have a brusque, slightly immature patriarch played by a charismatic actor that I love. Check. After just a 3-minute clip, my boyfriend was able to nail down pretty much exactly what this film was and why I would like it so much. A washed-up lawyer being evicted from his posh life, potentially falling back on his eccentric, variably successful wards in an understated dialogue, heavy properness, and otherworldly presence. Nailed it, babe. Wes Anderson doesn't fear narration, but he's also not lazy with his narration. What his narration does is helps introduce the characters in a succinct and precise way, and it allows what is shown to start from a more informed place. It cuts out things that you have to show but wouldn't be productive to show in the end. Telling is not a sin in fiction. Telling lazily is. The casting is just impeccable. Gene Hackman and Angelica Houston as Royal and Ethelene Tenenbaum is just an inspired choice. They were so much fun to watch. They brought such depth to this relationship. I also really liked the two boys playing Chaz's sons, Grant Rosenmeyer and Jonah Meyerson. They were just adorable. They looked like they were having so much fun. Danny Glover is a great fit for the film. He and Angelica Houston have a lot of endearing moments together. And I stand by the fact that Bill Murray probably does some of his best work in Wes Anderson films. He's really good in this. I want to highlight specifically Gene Hackman, though. I love Gene Hackman. Hoosiers is like my secret favorite movie, and it's not secret for any particular reason. I just don't have many opportunities to talk about Hoosiers. But Gene Hackman is just endlessly charismatic in this film. So most of the characters in Wes Anderson movies have that kind of Wes Anderson style of delivery where it's a little formal, a little muted, and that serves its purpose. In some cases, it amplifies the dialogue that's being said. Gene Hackman, by contrast, has kind of a more boisterous, a little more natural delivery for his dialogue. And to me, that ultimately shows just how alienated he is from his family, that he doesn't really fit in their world anymore. And I think ultimately it becomes a very effective choice. He also manages to make Royal this undeniably insufferable asshole, but he doesn't lose the audience's favor. He tempers Royal with this almost childlike need for approval, of wanting to be with his family again. And even as we learn about some of the shortcomings he has as a father, he never lost my sympathy. Please stop. To some degree, this film amplified my fears of parenthood. Even with all of the environmental and economic uncertainty, my biggest fears when it comes to potentially being a parent someday are rooted in getting it wrong. There's seeing the 3 children kind of trying to cope with how their father messed them up. It's like you get one shot to raise your kids, and if you do it wrong, like you've set up a cataclysmic chain of events. But I will also say this film kind of assuaged those fears by the time we got to the end, because the film demonstrates that if you put in the effort to reconcile with your children and to make things right, you have the potential to bring it all back and make it right. And I like that. Now, despite that very uplifting ending, Wes Anderson films have a deceiving amount of darkness in them, both overtly and covertly. And I haven't seen a lot of Wes Anderson movies, but I get the vibe that this might be the darkest. The characters in this movie, particularly the 3 Tenenbaum children, kind of embody that John Mulaney bit.
Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
Because you have Gwyneth Paltrow as Margot Tenenbaum, and Margot was the perfect role for Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow was made for Margot Tenenbaum. Top 10 casting decision of all time. She manages to make this moody, rebellious artist feel like a real person, and in fact makes being a moody, rebellious artist cool, which is impossible to pull off, but she makes it seem effortless. There's a lot in her backstory in particular that's like hinted at, that's told explicitly, but there's a lot going on with her, and I like what they do with the character. Again, that character is difficult to pull off both from a writing perspective and from an acting perspective. They also make her sympathetic, which I think, given the kind of person she is kind of difficult. Ben Stiller as Chaz I found to be a really nice change of pace. Most of the time, the uptight parent is the mother, but they flip that by having the father be an uptight character. Ben Stiller's character lost his wife in a plane crash, and he's trying to raise his two sons, and in the process of not dealing with the grief and the loss and the lack of closure he has with his father Royal, he's become a very obsessive, very frustrated person who wears his hurt on his red tracksuit sleeves, and he's not shy about lashing out. But at the same time, there's a ton of despair hiding underneath that, and it leads to just a tremendous moment. I don't think I've watched a film where a single line delivery made me burst into tears as suddenly as this movie did. Kudos to Ben Stiller. The way he said, "I've had a rough year, Dad," just broke me. He did so much in 2 seconds. He did more in those 2 seconds than some actors do in their entire career. Holy smokes. And then you have Luke Wilson as Richie. He's a good example of how overtly dark the movie can be. His character is a former tennis champion who retired at 26 after a match didn't go well. When he comes home, the circumstances that unfold kind of force his character to confront parts of himself that he's not necessarily comfortable with seeing, and that leads to some scary places. It's very painfully raw scenes with his character at the center. I don't have to tell you that Wes Anderson films thrive on meticulous framing and staging. It makes every frame interesting, and it naturally draws the eye. The use of manual camera sweeps was really cool in this movie. It made the camera feel like another character who was forced to watch all of these conversations no matter how awkward they were, and it was really neat. I like the use of Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. That's one of my favorite songs, and it really helped underscore just how fun the moment was. I really liked it a lot. This movie also offers a very interesting contrast to the Meyerowitz stories, which also stars Ben Stiller. But I think there's a lot going on both in the titles and in just how the stories play out that demonstrate those differences. For example, in the Meyerowitz stories, the Meyerowitz father does not put in the effort to reconcile or understand his children, and he's not interested in that. That's all Royal wants in this movie, is a chance to reconcile with his children. And so in the Meyerowitz stories, there's not this sense of reconciliation and redeeming the years that had been lost like there is in the Royal Tenenbaums. And the Royal Tenenbaums, not to get pedantic about the title, because it's the Royal Tenenbaums, it's named for the head of the household, so it already casts the story in a different light compared to the Meyerowitz stories. It's about Royal, and it's about the legacy that he left for his children with the kind of parent he was. And the fact that his name is Royal, it makes them feel like a family of nobles, so it is very much like, this is the last legs of a dynasty. You have to fix your kingdom before you leave. But because it is specifically about Royal, the fact that it is his name in the title, it's about him, and it's about how his behavior impacted his children. It's about how leaving affected them. And it's about how parents affect their children, for better or worse. That's so specific, but I love this movie. I love the title. The title works so well, and it informs the story beautifully. It's so good. This movie's for everyone, even if you aren't a fan of Wes Anderson's films. It's, if you like your family, if you don't like your family, if you're with your family, if you're not. Let the credits roll, bathed in the orange sunlight of the late afternoon. It was stupendous. I loved everything about this. It's a new favorite, to be sure. This has been my year in movies. Thank you for watching.